The Mets are in a tailspin.
Mm.
The Cardinals have now given the Rockies 12.5% of their total wins in their season. They have been one of the worst teams in baseball history by record in 2025. This is really as frustrating of an outcome as you could possibly imagine.
Yeah, the way the Cardinals let the series slip away against Colorado, knowing that the same thing happened when they played them out in Denver. You mentioned the 12.5%. I think it's like 25% of Colorado's series wins on the season have come against the Cardinals. And yeah, we've talked all year about Colorado being like the worst team in Major League history. Maybe it's the Cardinals that saved them from being that, because they might end up, inching past what last year's White Sox did. There's still a chance of that. And if they do, it'll be by virtue of how the Cardinals let them win 4 games. So all those happy thoughts about, hey, you played some really good baseball against the Dodgers. You beat the Cubs 2 out of 3. Hey, Yankees are coming to town. Just bridge the gap. Bridge the gap between the competitive series that you have and beat up on a bad team. Cardinals couldn't do it. They let it slip away last night. Couldn't score a run in game 2. And now we're sitting here on an off day going, well, now what? Because we had sort of suckered ourselves back into thinking about, hey, what about the playoffs? And now after the last 2 nights, I just don't see how you can necessarily be doing that. So we're kind of stuck here thinking about what's next for the Cardinals.
Well, and they currently sit 4 games back, and that's even more frustrating, right? I'm not saying you want to see them 6 games back or 7 games back. You always want them to be in the mix, but it reminds you of what could have been. You sweep the Rockies ahead of the Yankees coming into town. Suddenly, you're 2 games back, maybe 1 game back if things happen a little bit differently in New York, who, again, are in a complete tailspin. They have been one of the worst teams in baseball since the All-Star break. So there is a lane to get back into this if you're a Cardinals fan, if you are in that clubhouse, but you have to do it against the teams like the Rockies. You have to. And again, I'm not in that clubhouse. I am not one of those players. I cannot profess to know what it is like to be a Major League Baseball player on the day-to-day. But there really is no arguing the point. That's maybe not a sweep that you have to get, but you have to win one of those 2 series, right?
Yeah, I mean, you got to go 4 out of 6 for sure, right, against Colorado, and they go 2 out of 6. And I don't know if the Cardinals are going to be, at the end of the season, 2 games short of a playoff spot, but it could end up being very close to that margin. I mean, they're a 500 team today. We don't know what's going to happen the rest of the way, but it feels like a fool's errand to continue to say, hey, playoffs are 4 games back, like when we're watching what we're watching on the field. And here's the other part of this. I would understand some pushback where you say, okay, let's break it down. Second game of the Rockies series, Matt Pauley had the stat, 15 of the 17 hardest hit balls of the game were from Cardinals, right? They just didn't find holes. They found gloves instead, and you lose a hard luck game. All right. Once in a while, Stefan, you can lose a hard luck game. I don't think it's unfair to say in 2025, you maybe can't lose hard luck games to the Rockies, but if you do it, you can't do it twice. And so, I understand you traded Helsley, you traded Maton, you traded Matz, and so your bullpen looks different. But we had just gotten done praising the bullpen for the way that it has coalesced in the aftermath of the trade deadline. But then last night, Leahy gives up a run. O'Brien comes in a little shaky, but got through. Jojo Romero gives up the home run that cost you the game. Look, those guys have been good, and they're allowed a bad day here and there. It can't coalesce to be all of y'all having the bad day against the Rockies in Game 3 when you got to get a series win. So there are, individual moments you can point to from those games and say, oh, that's baseball. It happens. That you don't get the luxury of saying that for this series against this team if you want to be a playoff contender. And look, is it mathematically impossible now? No. But spiritually, it does feel kind of impossible. And it'll take all that much more on the other side. Instead of having to go continue, hey, win a series against the Yankees, continue to grind them out like you did against the Cubs and the Dodgers. Now you got to sweep the Yankees. Now you got to sweep other teams that it's not easy to sweep. The schedule gets a little bit tougher as you round out August. And so, yeah, you just can't realistically believe that this is the path that they're heading on. Maybe they'll surprise us, Stefan, but right now as we're operating here, I just cannot get, and I think Cardinals fans feel the same, emotionally into a place where it's like, hey, you never know, 4 games. I don't want to know about the 4 games. I want to know how many games above 500 the Cardinals are, because that tells me more about what kind of team that they actually are underneath it all.
I love that approach, Brendan. And to your point, I think hard hit rate, I think what you were talking about earlier is important in the development of these young players. But I come from an old-fashioned baseball family. Old man staring at a cloud raising me, I guess, would be a way that a lot of the young fans in baseball would say. But here's been my perception of hard hit rate, of exit velo, of WOBA, expected batting average. These analytics are trying to put lipstick on a pig. And the way that I look at it is this, is if you go up to a hitter and you show them 10 statistics, which ones do you think they're going to pick if they have a choice? The ones that are going to make them look the best, right? If you have an expected batting average of 350, but you're hitting 210, at some point you've got to ask the question, right? People hit the same types of ground balls. They hit the same type of fly balls. I don't care about what you're expected to do. I care about what happens in the game. And in the game, you've got to find ways to hit. Here are the things that I'm looking at. I'm looking at hitting with runners in scoring position. That was really bad against the Rockies. I'm looking at the progression of the middle of the order. We started to see a little bit more power. That's a positive. Pitching late has not been an issue for the Cardinals by and large this season. It was late against the Rockies. So it's not a meltdown moment, but all of the silver linings of, oh, well, the expected batting average was good on this swing, or, oh, this ball was hit really hard, it didn't contribute to anything. It didn't amount to any runs. So, I mean, I think that we can go around in circles and say that, hey, this is a really good thing for the Cardinals that they're doing this. And on one hand, it is. But against a team like the Rockies, is that really where you want to hang your hat? That's not where I want to hang mine.
No, and it's not time for a helicopter, 10,000-foot view of the situation. When you're facing the Rockies and your previous proof of concept was like good series against the Dodgers, bad game from Michaelis that cost you, good series against the Cubs, and a bad middle game start that cost you, so you couldn't sweep those series. But you played some really good baseball over the course of a week. And look, game one against the Rockies, they won it, but only because Donnie comes off the bench to play hero. They didn't do enough offensively, and it's just not a tip your cap pitching staff. I'm sorry. But when you're facing Kyle Freeland, you're facing Austin Gomber, they got to Gomber. Good on them for that. But the bullpen's not a tip your cap bullpen. You can't just say, well, they got some good arms down there. All these guys are professionals. They're all getting paid the same. The Rockies, relative to the league, do not have some good arms down there. They don't. They have the arms that you're supposed to be able to get because all the other teams in the league are doing it. And so when you take this sort of, hey, here's the helicopter view, they're hitting the ball hard, baseball happened to him tonight. Totally true. But like the body of work to this point has added up to something that demonstrates you weren't allowed to have that happen to you and have it be the excuse for a loss in this particular series. You haven't afforded yourselves that luxury. And it's okay. Like, world's not going to stop spinning when the Cardinals go 81-81 this year. But I love what Paul Goldschmidt said back when he was with the team. I think it was 2023 where he gave the quote, Cardinals were struggling early. And it was just another one of those days where you're like, oh, let's ask Goldie because he's kind of the veteran leader on the team. How's the team handling this? And at a certain point, he comes out and says, look, we think we're a good baseball team. But the thing about baseball is it's a fair game. You play 162 games, you play for 6 months, you're going to find out. The record's going to tell you what kind of team you actually were. We can think within these walls that we're a good team. Baseball's a fair game. It'll let you know at the end what you were for that season. And that season, the Cardinals were not nearly enough, right? Ended up having to sell at the deadline. They weren't a very good team. We look at this year, they sold at the deadline. They weren't a bad team, but they're a middling team. And there's only so many times you can say, you know what, if not for those 6 or 7 games where luck went against us, which it's going to do for all 30 teams, right? You're going to have those games where you hit the ball hard and it doesn't pan out. But you play for 6 months, you play for 162 games, you'll know what kind of team you were. And then ideally, if it doesn't end up resulting in the end result that you want, if you're the St. Louis Cardinals, front office comes in and says, we're going to make changes based on that. We're going to, at a certain point, not continue to react to only here's what should have happened. Frankly, what should be happening is the Cardinals should be a handful of games below 500. If you look at run differential, if you look at a number of the expected stats from that perspective. And once again, they're hanging right there around 500. I believe that to be a tribute to what Ollie Marmol has done as manager, what the coaching staff has been able to get out of these guys. But then that would say, okay, the true reflection of the talent of the 26-man roster is maybe lower than what the record is. And if that's the case, that's where the front office will have to come in and make tweaks, make changes. I don't think it's an easy task to know exactly where to make those tweaks and changes. But I think it's indisputable at this point that if the Cardinals, kind of go 500 again this year when they were expected to be a little bit below that. And so this is not drastically outside the bounds of what could have happened for the season. But that's not a reason to just continue to say, hey, status quo, we're doing fine. So it'd be interesting to see how the season finishes out, how that impacts maybe what Chaim Bloom is looking at going into the offseason with some of these runway candidates and how the runway may morph or shift for next year. And then you got to go from there. But gosh, you're right. It's a testament to what could have been when you come into that second game of the Rockies series, a couple of games above 500, watching what's happening with the New York Mets. Should be 2 games below 500 right now because, yeah, you can't say, oh, it should be an easy sweep. That's a hard thing to do in baseball. I'll make an exception for this Rockies team, though. You got to be able to win the season series against that team. And Cardinals not only were unable to do that, they couldn't find a split. They end up losing 4 of 6, and they're where they are as a result.
Well, this is Card Central 365, powered by Graybar, your distributor for electrical and datacom needs. He's Brendan Schaeffer. I'm Stefan Caray. And one thing that we, I think, lightly touched on, the Cardinals take 2 out of 3 from the Dodgers. They take 2 out of 3 from the Cubs. You come back and you have the Rockies as the middle of a long homestand. That's the thing that really, really makes me wonder is, again, you can't know that every series is a trap series, right? But the Rockies have been a trap for them already once this season. And do you feel like feet were taken off the gas pedal a little bit? This is a young team that, hey, you had 2 really tough opponents in the Dodgers and Cubs. Oh, the Rockies are going to come into town. We're going to relax a little bit.
Gosh, I hope that's not what happened. And look, I'm sure if you asked coaching staff and the manager and the players, they would probably say, no, that's not the way that this goes. We're going to put everything into every single game that we have. And, it's something that you can't afford to have happen. I can't say I've identified anything over the past 2 games watching it play out that was the case. But does there come a point in a game where you go, oh, man, 11 of the 14 hard hit balls that we've had, haven't found a hole. And then that's the part where somewhere in the corners of your mind, you're like, we might lose today. And you kind of allow that to infiltrate. Those are the things that you may not notice. I don't call it like taking foot off the gas pedal or necessarily, oh, they're not trying, they don't want to win. That's an implication that fans can bring up that I don't agree with.
No,
but can you say
suggesting that this was a Rockies team after 2 tough opponents where if you could put your feet up and coast a little bit, of course you're still trying to win, but you're less concerned about them than you were, say, the Cubs and Dodgers.
Yeah, was the preparation any different? Was the mentality any different coming into the series rather than I think it's more like you get down 3-0 in a game and you're like, what happened? Where that's where you go, man, we're supposed to beat these guys. In the darkest corners of your minds, does that creep in? There's a possibility that does. Yesterday is the frustrating part, though. It's almost the inverse of that, where it's like 5-2, we're beating the Rockies, we're doing what we're supposed to, and then you don't tack on against the Colorado bullpen. I don't know the statistics of what the MLB, what the team stats are when it comes to the Rockies and their bullpen, but I'm going to guess it's not top of the league. I'm going to guess that their relief corps is a relief corps that teams have been able to, generally speaking, do some damage against. And so it's like, we did our job. And again, I'm not speaking to the individual at bats. I'm not saying I could go in and point out, oh, he gave this at bat away, he gave that. Not necessarily saying that, but like you look at the body of work of what the rest of that game was. Yeah, Colorado, 5.43. That's their bullpen ERA. It's 29th in baseball. They got 5 runs against Austin Gomber. They had a 5-2 lead, at least in like the narrative of a game. Maybe it doesn't match reality, but you're up 5-2. You're thinking, we got this in the bag. And are you scrapping and clawing as though the game's tied or you're down by 1? Because maybe that offense could have used an extra run, but they were probably figuring bullpen's not going to falter. It's been so good recently, and it kind of snuck up on them. It's like, it's 5-3. That's fine, still winning. That's 5 to. We're down 6-5, and then your goose is cooked. So yeah, I think coming into the series, you could have said we're a team that just beat the Cubs and the Dodgers. We're going to handle the Rockies. And then the vibes after game 1 are like, we didn't really deserve to win this game, but we did. We got away with this one, and now we're going to roll. And they didn't score the next day, Stefan. And so that, you're careful with criticizing effort. I am anyway. But how do you do that? How do you go and lose to that team, not score a run? The Rockies had like a 200-game streak where they didn't shut anybody out. Now they've done it to the Cardinals twice in 3 weeks or whatever it's been. Again, whatever the implication, we don't have to make an implication, but the results speak for themselves. And those are not good results.
Right. And in no way am I criticizing the preparation or the concern, because you know that Brant Brown, that Stubby Clapp, that Ollie Marmol, that Pop Warner, all those guys are getting them well prepared. But this is also a youth aspect of this team. And we'll touch on that a little bit more after we talk a little bit about DraftKings. Nothing beats relaxing on a hot summer day and watching baseball. And the simplest way to get in on the action is to download the Pick 6 app from DraftKings. It's crazy simple. Just pick more or less on the stats for 2 or more of your favorite players, and boom, you're in the mix for big cash prizes. Pick 6 available right here in Missouri. Don't miss out on the fun. Don't settle for a smaller payout. Switch to Pick 6. And right now, new customers can get $25 in bonus picks with their first deposit of $5. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports for new customers to get $25 in bonus picks with their first deposit of $5. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promo.